And we are live on the air, and welcome everybody here to the House of Rabs. Give yourselves a round of applause for tuning in tonight, or if you're watching on YouTube, for making the move, taking the time to watch us. I'm your host, Rabbi Rabs, and to my right is my co-host tonight, the one and only, the very holy Levi Ben Abraham, aka Luke Ford, who you might know from Once Upon a Time. Say hello to the audience.
Hey, sports fans.
You might recognize his name, Luke Ford, from his past days when he was breaking major stories in the porn industry. Today, a major story broke in the porn industry, and I'm thinking, Levi went back to work. He shaved his beard. He said last week he was going to shave his beard. He shaved his beard. He went back to work in the porno industry, and he already in the first week has broken a major story. You know, and he's been keeping it on the down low. Like, if you notice, like, he hasn't been online very much. He's been like, oh, yeah, I have a bad back, you know. But really, you know, he's out there breaking the big story. So tell us, what's going on with this story?
Well, I was talking to Whitney Wonders last night, and Whitney told me. So I made my name writing about HIV transmission in the porn industry, and so I was opening up the LA Times this morning, and I saw that all porn production has been shut down in Southern California because they've had another diagnosis of HIV. Now, the porn industry has traditionally gone through one testing center, its own testing center, Adult Industry Medicine, AIM, but that got shut down by Los Angeles County health authorities, and so now the whole system of monitoring HIV infections in flux. But I think this whole story, because it keeps emerging every few years as new HIV infections hits the front page of the LA Times, and remember, sometimes it's like the top story in the world. It goes on Drudge, and it drives a lot of news attention. But to me, it primarily
why. Yeah, go ahead.
It primarily illustrates how everything we do affects other people. You can't just, however libertarian you are, you can't say, well, whatever they do in porn, that doesn't affect anyone outside of porn. Because if people in porn are transmitting sexually transmitted diseases, they're not just going to spread them to people in porn, because there's not like a perfect barrier between porn people and the rest of the population. So when disease spread in the porn industry, it poses a threat to people outside the porn industry who knowingly or unknowingly have sex with people in the porn industry.
Now, let me ask you this. I may have had vicarious sex with a few people in the...
Right, I had the real sex. So, I mean, I was...
So let me ask you this question. Can I get the disease transmitted to me by simply downloading their pornography?
You can't get a physical disease, but you can get spiritual or moral or
because I know that
other diseases.
My software says I should protect myself on downloads from contracting viruses, and I was just wondering if this had nothing to...
Well, in the secular age, people think that viruses are primarily something that is physical and disease-oriented.
Now you're going to
spiritual and moral and religious viruses are every bit as devastating, if not more, than physical viruses. I remember there was one young woman, Roxanne, I think.
Roxanne! You don't have to... Go ahead.
Caught HIV about 7 years ago.
What a name for somebody in that industry. Yeah, go ahead.
And a news reporter, went back to her home in Canada, a news reporter interviewed her and then interviewed me, saying, I think it's bad that there are people selling the scene where she caught HIV, caught this deadly disease.
Okay.
And I said, no, because why is that any worse than watching a scene where someone's soul dies? So, you know, catching a deadly disease or watching someone's soul die, I mean, you can see that in porn stars when they come into the industry. They have this whole fresh, you know, sometimes innocent look, and then you can just see their soul destroyed as they work with, you know, Max Hardcore or Contusion.
What about these names?
Or Rocco Siffredi, or you know, Ron Jeremy, or you know, some of the other stalwarts of the industry. You can just see them die inside on camera. So it's a little bit like a fling with hard drugs. Someone who has a fling with hard drugs and then stops, they're forever affected by those drugs they took. They have lost a certain innocence and a certain natural joy in life, and they've been hardened to a certain extent. So that, for me, I've plundered a lot of women. My marriage life, my sex life once I get married, is going to be affected by all the sex I had before. Like, I think someone who waits until marriage and then only has sex with one person, they're much more likely to stay faithful and to, they're going to have certain advantages not having tasted the forbidden fruit. So again, the main point is that you can't say, oh, what I do has no effect on anyone else. Everything we do affects other people. So the choices we make in the privacy of our own life is going to have an effect on us, and what's going on inside of us is going to affect other people when we interact with them.
Okay, so that's a nice religious part. That's the spiritual side of it. Now, you were starting off by saying that the libertarian can't say, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with me.
Right.
So what should the attitude be?
I don't have a position. I find it easier that way as someone who primarily just reports rather than gives his opinion. But I do have some opinions. One is that a society can never have complete acceptance of the pornography industry. You say that pornography is, as completely legitimate as any other form of entertainment.
Right.
More and more people will go into the porn industry, and more of your society will be affected by pornography because it's such an exciting thing to do when you're young, and it's a way to make relatively easy money. And you'll develop more of a hooker mentality, particularly among attractive, lazy young women. Like, the hooker mentality is, how can I make money while exerting the least amount of effort? So those are the type of people who primarily go into prostitution. And so you will have a lot more of that if you say this is completely okay, we don't need to stigmatize it. So I'm not exactly sure where government should step in, but I think society should definitely stigmatize sex work. And I definitely think that government does have a role to play in declaring some of it off limits, because here again is where I differ from the libertarians. I think if you just allow people to be free, they'll naturally destroy themselves. I think there do need to be some limits. There need to be some bulwarks. So that's why I am for decreeing that marriage should only be between a man and a woman, for saying that incest is illegal, and there have to be limits against sex work. I'm not sure where they should be drawn, but there have to be limits or society will just slide downhill. I'm also for the continued illegalization of hard drugs. So I think there have to be limits, because if you don't criminalize these activities, so many more people will participate in them, and that will drag down society, because most people are lazy and indolent and looking for cheap thrills. And unless you provide some pretty strong bulwarks, they're just going to go right off the derrick.
Are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have any more to add to it? Because I have a bunch of things to rebut on. Because I'm more of a libertarian here. I'm more of a libertarian. I take issue with a lot of the things you said. I'm gonna spew the libertarian position here with the logic behind it. First of all, the reason why porn should be allowed to do whatever it wants, full blown, is because you can't control it. You can't stop people from looking at porn. You might be able to get people to stop filming porn in your municipality, but you'll never get people to stop buying porn. And as long as there are people buying porn, you can't stop the whole industry. And since you can't stop the industry, what good do you do by stopping the business end of it in your municipality? It's not stopping porn. You're not even making a dent in it. All you're doing is forcing the industry to move elsewhere and putting money in another place's pocket, whether that be a different city, a different county, a different state, or a different country. You will not stop porn. And if we make it illegal in the city of Los Angeles, they'll take it to Simi Valley, what they call Seaman Valley, right? And that's where they do their filming. Now, they'll just move it right there. So you didn't do anything. You just took money out of LA and moved it to a different city. If you say we're going to make it